You have some of the establishment support, including from the governor and the outgoing representative, Congressman Nadler. If you were to win, what would be your approach to taking on, if Democrats, let's say, get the majority, which many polls suggest they will, what should be the first order of business?
Well, I think the first order of business, if we take the majority, we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. So there should be real accountability for the Trump administration, aggressive use of House oversight authority to hold administration officials accountable. And we need to start working on a program that I proposed, a first job guarantee for young people in this country. Make sure that if you want to go to work, we're going to make sure you can get a meaningful job at a living wage with health care benefits. We should help with people getting their first home a lot more expansively than we are today, and help make sure that people can get through their first year of parenting without getting crushed by the costs. I think only if the Democratic Party returns to these core economic questions will we be able to rebuild people's faith in government, rebuild people's faith in the party.
At the same time that Democrats should move forward with these core principles and deal with needs that people really have. How do you then balance that with, if the Democrats do take the Congress and Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker, how do you balance the fact that there's a lot of things that you have to deal with the White House? Yeah. Trump will still be president. Trump will still have all of the agencies, including the Justice Department, on him. Under his powers. So don't you have to have a offensive and defensive strategy at the same time? Because it's not like Trump is going to sit in the White House and just let you institute all of these ideas.
No, I think, Rev, the way you put it is exactly right. You need an offensive and a defensive strategy. I've also put out detailed plans about how House Democrats can use their power to both slow and stall what Trump and Mike Johnson are trying to do, and a full inventory of oversight and investigations that we should walk in on day one to the House majority and be prepared to hold. And I think we have to connect what these guys have done, the kleptocracy, the stealing, the wars, and the cost of living crisis that people are facing all across this country. And that's got to be the focus of House oversight.
I got a lot of students coming out of, I teach at Tulane, but here in New York, that idea of a first jobs guarantee, because it used to be pretty easy when I came out of college. There were lots of recruiters at tables, and you joined Time Inc. or Procter & Gamble. What is a first job guarantee you could do?
I worked a lot on mental health care issues in New York State. I crafted the state's billion-dollar plan to reinvest in mental health. And when I did that work, what we discovered was massive workforce shortages in mental health, massive workforce shortages in health care, in education, in the trades. These are jobs that are vitally important for society. They are largely publicly funded, and there are workforce shortages. We should make sure we're paying people enough, getting them the training, and organizing federal resources to connect those young people to these jobs. And tell every young person, you want to go to work, we're going to make sure you can do it in a societally important job, contribute, give back. And, it's not a new idea. It kind of harkens back to FDR and Francis Perkins, New Deal, Works Progress Administration. Great New Yorkers. Nothing new under the sun. We got to bring some of that spirit back to the Democratic Party, I think.
Mr. Assemblyman, Katty Kayes in Washington, and she has the next question.
I wanted to ask you about your Project 2026, which is a blueprint that you've drawn up to kind of push back against the Trump administration. And one of the things that you're particularly focused on is limiting the president's power to possibly invoke the Insurrection Act. Amid all of the things that New Yorkers have to be concerned about, I wonder why you're focusing on that one.
Well, look, I traveled to Minneapolis after Alex Preddy was assassinated on the streets of Minneapolis. And what I saw there shook me to my core. It was a city under occupation by our own government. And we need to make sure that that cannot happen under this president or any future president. And I think that what we've seen, a big part of the Trump agenda has been trampling on the laws that are on the books. They've been winning 40% of the time in the circuit and district courts, 80% of the time in the Supreme Court. So one of the things Democrats need to go back in and do is fix these laws that they have exploited. The Insurrection Act, the War Powers Resolution, the Impoundment Control Act, which intends to prevent the president from subverting the will of Congress when it comes to sending funds out. They've turned that on its head. So Democrats need to go in, fix these laws, and protect our country, not just from Trump, but from Trumpism in the future.
So, Mr. Sunman, obviously, any elected official representing parts of New York City has to deal with the New York Post. Today, they have Mayor Mamdani on the front page. They seem to take swipes at him on a daily basis. And today, they were very critical of his decision to skip the Israel Day parade, which was here in New York City yesterday. He said he was an opponent of the current Israeli government. We should note there were some pretty far right wingers in the Israeli government there. People were upset about some of the situation in Gaza, which is why other elected officials chose to walk away as well. What should the mayor have done yesterday?
Boy, the mayor, I'm not going to speak to the mayor's decision to attend or not to attend. What the city of New York did, Commissioner Tisch made sure that the hundreds of thousands, I think it was hundreds of thousands of people who were there, were safe. And that was the most important thing that the city of New York could do.
Police commissioner did march there representing the administration. A few former mayors were there as well. Candidate for U.S. Congress, New York Assemblyman Michael Lasher, thank you for being here this morning.